So today, folks, we have a fantastic one for you. This is great for summer or fall or honestly whenever. Whenever you want something light and cheesy and rich and delicious and takes you back to your childhood. We have homemade tomato basil soup and a grilled cheese sandwich with lots of oozing cheese. It's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to make this for you. So let's just start this video now. So the ingredients that we're going to use today to make our tomato basil soup are, I got 3 pounds of Roma tomatoes here, fresh, which I'm going to roast in the oven with this garlic. You can use 1 or 2 heads of garlic. These are kind of small, so I'm going to use 2. As you'll see, I'm just going to cut the tops off and roast them in the oven with the tomatoes. And then I've got a lot of basil here, which I need to use up, which was the reason for making this video in the first place. And then I've got your basic mirepoix, which is going to be your carrot, onion, and celery, salt and pepper, olive oil, some vegetable stock, and then we're going to do a grilled cheese sandwich with that. So we're going to use sourdough bread because I really like the flavor of it, and some mozzarella and some smoked cheddar cheese. So this is for the melty part, and this is for a little bit more flavor because mozzarella doesn't have much. Of course, butter, and that's about it. It's pretty simple, it's pretty basic, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get our tomatoes and garlic in the oven because it's going to take the longest amount of time. So probably about 45 minutes to an hour to get it roasted up nice and well to get those flavors concentrated so that your soup is absolutely fantastic. Make sure to always wash your vegetables and your hands. Okay, so we got our tomatoes all washed up. You want to do that just to get those pesticides off of there more than any other reason. And then we're going to core a tomato. It's really simple. You're just going to want to hold a knife really close to the edge, maybe about a ½ inch away. And you're going to pop it into the tomato and just go around and pop it out. And that's it. You've cored your tomato just like that. So I'm going to do that to the rest of those and I'll see you in a second. After you're done coring your tomato, you're just going to want to cut them in half lengthwise like that. And the reason I'm using these tomatoes is because there's not as much middle and seed in these Roma tomatoes, so there's going to be a less amount of water content, which is going to allow again your flavors to be more concentrated, and you won't have to reduce it as much at the end. And then you're just going to want to cut the top off your garlic, exposing all the garlic just like that, and just stick that right on here. So we got all of our tomatoes cut and laid out on our roasting sheet. Our garlic is here. So we're just gonna wanna put some olive oil on there. And I mean, use a good healthy amount. Don't be stingy. This is going to add a lot of flavor and get them roasted up real nice. And make sure you get lots on the garlic there. Then you're gonna wanna season them. Don't forget to season them. This is important. Salt and pepper. You know, we like pepper around here. Now we're going to put them in the oven. Like I said, we're going to do 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. While those are in the oven roasting, we're going to go ahead and start cutting up our mirepoix, which is our carrot, onion, celery, and then we'll get that going in here, softened up, ready for the rest of the vegetables to add to it. And because it's going to be a blended soup or a bisque, we're not going to need to worry so much about how evenly or finely diced or anything like that. So we could do a basic rough chop. And we're just going to throw our knives around. It's the best way to make them dull and no good. It's just the way we like to live our lives on the edge around here. Again, don't forget to wash your vegetables. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, why did I just go through so much trouble chopping up this carrot to approximately the same size if we're just going to give it a rough chop? Well, that's just so it can cook evenly, so we don't have like undercooked pieces at the end of when we're done and ready to blend. All right, we got our mirepoix ready for the soup, but obviously our tomatoes still have at least another 35 minutes to go. So we're not going to start that quite yet. We'll probably wait another 15 minutes or so. We just need to soften this stuff up, and 20 minutes should probably be more than enough. Okay, we got about 11 to 15 minutes left for the stuff in the oven to be finished roasting. So we're just going to go ahead and start cooking our mirepoix so it's nice and slightly caramelized and softened by the time we're ready to add everything else. We'll get that in there. Naturally, we had our little wood spoon ready, like we always do. A little more olive oil. Now, this is one of the parts where you're going to want to decide if you're going to make this a vegan meal or not, because at this point we are completely vegan, but I'm going to add some butter to this because I'm going to enjoy that. But if you don't want, you could just stick with the olive oil. and don't use any butter. I am using a vegetable stock, so make sure you're using a vegetable stock instead of chicken or beef stock or something like that if you want it to be vegan. I'm going to finish it with a little bit of cream, but if you don't want to do that, obviously then just don't do that. It's going to be just as good either way. So once you get this in here, just make sure you season this as you go. A little bit, not too much. Obviously, we can adjust at the end so we don't over salt. The timer on the oven went off, so our tomatoes should be ready. They're looking pretty good, nice and roasted. Boom, roasted. Finally got to use it. Okay, so our tomatoes and our garlic are roasted. We're just gonna let this cool for a second. We've got our mirepoix in here, and while you guys were away, I did add a couple tablespoons of butter, just so you know. And we're just starting to get some color on our onions, so we're looking good there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these tomatoes into there. Make sure you get all those lovely juices in there as well. All the olive oil and roasted tomato juices are going to add a lot of flavor. Now is a great time to add your stock, and because we roasted our tomatoes, we're not going to need to, cook them on the stove for like 45 minutes because we already cooked them in the oven. So we're going to add our stock. I'm not really too sure about how much stock I was going to add, but I feel like if I just cover everything, we should be good. We're going to wait until this comes up to a boil, and then we're probably going to blend it all together. And don't forget that lovely garlic. We just want to get that out. When you roast a garlic, all you should have to do is squeeze it. They should just pop out when you squeeze them, just like that. It's definitely hot. When they show you this, they must let it cool down first. Get that roasted garlic in there. Okay, we're just gonna let this simmer for a bit before we blend it. Let that vegetable stock reduce a bit since it is a store-bought one, and we'll get some cheese sliced up in the meantime. So the cheese I've selected today is difficult to get out of its package.
That really adds to the flavor.
It's a really nice pizza mozzarella. It's going to be great for melting, for that cheese pull sort of look and feel. And we're just going to slice it up into pieces, obviously, that we can use on our sandwiches. Now you can of course slice this as thin or thick as you like, depending on how much cheese you like on your grilled cheese sandwich. And then I also have a nice smoked cheddar, white cheddar, not orange, because cow's milk is never orange. Just saying, guys. I think we're ready to start blending this up. We got our pan for our grilled cheese heating up. I'm just going to do it on like a medium low. By the time the bread's nice and toasted, the cheese will also be melted. You don't want to do it too high, otherwise you'll toast the bread or burn it on the outside, and the cheese will still be raw in the middle. Right, Gordon? You know what I'm talking about, right? So I'm just going to put some of our basil into the soup now and get it blended in there. And then, of course, we'll leave some for the end for plating. We'll get a nice piece if there is one. So we're just going to throw that in there. It's going to get blended up anyway. We don't really need to cook it at all. The longer you cook the basil, the less flavor it's actually going to have. So that's why we're waiting till the end to put it in. We're putting a fair amount, probably half a cup. I don't know, something. So if you don't have an immersion blender at home, you can definitely use a normal blender. It would probably be a lot quicker, actually. Just make sure when you're doing it, because hot liquids, when you blend them, expand, that you don't fill it up all the way. You want to fill it like half or 3/4 of the way, and then blend it in batches if you need to do that. If you don't have a good blender and you don't have an immersion blender, or if you just want it to be like a very rustic, chunky soup with lots of, chunks in there, then you could just use even a potato masher and just give it a rough mash, and then you'll be left with a soup with lots of meat to it, you know what I mean? So now would be a good time to just give it a taste and make sure your seasoning is good. Pretty good. A little more pepper and just a hint more salt, I think will be good. I'm just going to run this through a little mesh strainer. You don't need to do that. I just prefer it that way myself. It's definitely not necessary if you don't want to do it. Now we're going to do the grilled cheese portion of this dish that we're doing today. So I got my sourdough bread here. I really enjoy sourdough bread. Got a little bit of a punchy flavor to it. So we're just going to generously butter our bread. Well, that's generously for me anyway. Bread down on a nice frying pan that's on medium-low heat, because you want that cheese to melt before the bread is toasty burnt. I'm just going to go in with some cheese. I got mozzarella here, and I got a really nice smoked cheddar, and we're just gonna pile that all into there. Cover it with our bread. If you want to do this really fast and you have the means by which, like a salamander, to melt the cheese, you could toast both pieces of bread at one time and then melt the cheese and then put them together. We're doing it in our pan, so we can't do that. I'm just gonna get some soup in this bowl here, ready for plating. I'm getting a little bit of color on there. All right, the other side's looking pretty good. We'll just get that back on the other side for some more color. If you find your cheese isn't quite melting and your bread's cooking a little too fast, you can always just cover it. It'll trap some of that heat in there and then melt the cheese better. Do you know what I'm saying, Ming? Want to say hi to my little lid? Well, I think our grilled cheese is looking rather delicious. It's the nice color that I'm looking for. A little bit darker brown, but not burnt. So first we're going to garnish our soup with a little bit of cream, a little bit of basil, a little bit of basil in my soup. Gonna try and stand it up so it doesn't turn purple from the heat. And we're just gonna cut our grilled cheese now for a nice, delicious cheese pull. Oh yeah. And there you have it, folks. One grilled cheese sandwich and homemade tomato soup, or tomato bisque, or whatever you'd like to call it. Let's get a close-up of that cheese right there and the soup.
Hello, I'm gonna try my father's grilled cheese sandwich and tomato basil soup or bisque or whatever you want to call it. I'm just gonna pull out the basil here for a second because I don't feel like eating things of basil right now. I probably actually will eat these later. Little like pieces of raw basil leaf like dipped in the sauce actually do taste pretty good, to be quite honest. So first I'm just gonna try a little bit of the soup here just to see how it is and judge it intensely. Very good. Got a nice like basil flavor, as it should. There's a lot of basil in here. It should taste like basil to some degree. It's got a nice consistency. It's not like too thick where it kind of feels like vomit, and it's not too thin. And it's got a nice kind of creaminess to it. There's a little bit of cream added, but it's just got a nice like creaminess to it in general. Now I'm gonna try the grilled cheese just on its own, and then I'm gonna mix them. It's also very good. It has a nice crunchiness. It's not like burnt, but it's not like too soft, you know? You want it to have that nice crunch and have a little structure on top. And the cheese is great. It's all melty and nice. The mozzarella has a really nice texture when it's melted. And then the aged cheddar adds a really nice like aged cheese flavor. It's all just great. It's a very good grilled cheese on its own. But now, here comes the main show. We're gonna mix the two together and it's gonna be like blast of flavor. And just as I thought, you put the two together and it elevates both the dishes to like the next level. They're very good together. Obviously, it's a classic for like years now. I think almost everyone who grew up has eaten it, at least in North America. Everyone knows it, everyone loves it. The soup just adds a nice bit of like moisture to the grilled cheese. The nice basil flavor goes really well with the flavor of the sourdough and the cheese. It's all just so good. The soup, I'm gonna give a 7 out of 10 just because I'm not the biggest fan of tomato soup, but even this one is great. The grilled cheese, I'll give like an 8.5 out of 10. They're good, but they're just not super special on their own. Both of these together, I'll give like a 9 out of 10. They're great together, they complement each other well, and it's just a great dish. So we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Don't do that actually, that's another YouTuber's outro. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye.